Hi, I am Azer. In this podcast series, I share my experiences, learnings, and my professional network with you. The topics discussed here are particularly aimed at supporting people in corporate life and help them navigate their career paths more consciously. Here, you will find special talks around learning, development, talent management, culture, art, and of course, professional coaching. If we are ready, let's get started. It has been a pleasure to introduce you all my dear friend, my ex-manager at Coca-Cola, Tuba Kazmi. She is now Global Director of Inclusion Frameworks, Programs and Initiatives and locates in Istanbul, Turkey. Welcome, Tuba'cığım.
Hi, Azar. Thank you so much for having me.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And since we begin and no one knows you, I would love everyone to hear your story moving to Turkey from Pakistan with 2 kids and mom, looking after them as well as taking care of your big team at Coca-Cola, which was also challenging. So could you let us know your biggest challenge in this picture?
Well, Azar, it's always a pleasure to have to be with you and to talk to you. Once again, thank you for having me. Well, that is a story that I love sharing with people because some of the points in that story that I always highlight is that one, it's okay to do experiments in life, no matter how small or big they are. And second, one of my, I wouldn't call it a value, but one of my belief system is that the universe is always doing things that may not make sense to you in the moment, but you realize later on that that was what was meant for you. So I'll take a little while to introduce myself. Yes, I'm originally from Pakistan. I was born and raised in Lahore, which is the second biggest city in Pakistan. And I finished my education. I started working in Lahore, and I had never thought that I will ever move out of the city because everything was within that city. I got married in the same place. I was living in the same city after marriage as well. The marriage did not work out, so everything, all of my support system and all of my comfort zone was in that city. Very quickly, I've been in the HR profession for about 24 years now. And as a choice, after working as a generalist, or nowadays we call it as SPP, for about a decade, I chose to move to the COE side, and I was very passionate about talent space, the culture space, the employee engagement space, and that's when I started working for Coca-Cola HHC in Pakistan. Um, and after spending 2 years in Coca-Cola HHC Pakistan, the corporate headquarters in Istanbul asked me to move to Turkey to a newly created position. And interestingly, my first reaction was, I think, out of fear of moving out of my comfort zone. And I said, no, I don't want to relocate at this stage. Another reason being that I had recently got divorced, and the constant factor in my children's life was the grandparents' house, their school. But as I said a little while back, destiny has other plans. So I did accept the offer, and I moved to Istanbul, Turkey. And now, when I look back, it was a huge learning experience, both from a personal point of view as well as from a professional point of view. Being a single parent and having an 8 year and a 5 year old at hand, coming to a new country at a position which was newly created, being the first non Turkish person, the HR department, of course, had its challenges. And I realized that it's not going to be easy. So that's why, before making a decision to move, I requested my mother to come with me. And both my parents were kind enough to let that happen. So I think one of the biggest challenges that I had when I moved to Turkey was learning the way of life in a new country, learning to understand how different people are working, what are their thinking processes, how to adjust in that environment, how to stay true to myself as well, but at the same time, blend in with some of my colleagues and make sure that they are able to welcome me and they're able to work with me as well. So that was one of the bigger challenges. I always say that people in Turkey are very hospitable and they are very open. And another thing that I really love about people in Turkey is that they're hospitable, they're welcoming, they will help you. And at the same time, they don't interfere in your life that much.
Mm,
You get to live the way you want to live, which was something I really appreciated. So those were some of the initial challenges. On a lighter note, of course, trying to learn how to drive in Turkey, because in Pakistan it was right-hand drive, and in
mm,
Turkey it was left-hand drive. Learning how to drive in snow, you know, because I was the first person coming in to the corporate headquarters. Some of my team members were also learning a lot of things with me. For example, how to convert my driver's license so that I can drive
mm,
in Turkey. Um, so this is something, and I always tell a funny story that language, of course, was a challenge.
mhm,
I coming from subcontinent and having traveled a lot in Asia and across North America and UK, I was naive enough to think that English being an international language, it would be easy for me to manage, even though I do not know the local language. But that was another learning. Never
mhm,
assume anything. So when I came, of course, language was a huge challenge, just to even for basic navigation. But now that I look back, it was all very growing for me.
mm,
Moving to another country, setting up yourself from scratch, finding ways to make sure that your children are comfortable and they are happy. And of course, my mother had a huge support role to play. But at the end of the day, I had to do everything outside the house.
mhm,
Where to go for groceries, children's school activities, figuring out how to set up the house,
mhm,
learning how to use some of the appliances, which had instruction manual in another language. So overall, it was great. When I look back, I'm really happy and appreciative of all those people who influenced me to move here.
mhm,
And of course, all of the folks who have helped me in settle over here. And by the way, it is still there. I still have a huge support system, you being
mm.
one of them, who are always there to help me whenever I become across a barrier because of my language, challenges or anything else.
And I am very happy to help you if I can. And what I hear from you is mostly the challenges that are naturally happening during any transition phase. So you mainly uh, mentioned about the challenges in your private life, and I mean learning, lots of conversions. I mean, being both Muslim countries, still there are lots of huge differences, and you are adapting with a growth mindset. But this is what I hear, and I will just focus you in a company environment, work environment, and I would like to share with everyone with a great confidence that Tuba is the manager that truly coaches people. I mean, coaching means enabling people around you without you even noticing. This was something that I saw while I was reporting to her during our company times at Coca-Cola, and I remember that I found my self-confidence rising each and every day, and just because Tuba is caring and enabling me doing, making mistakes and encouraging to try again. So, since your area of interest is diversity and inclusion, is there a reason behind your this suitable character and picking up this function or area?
Absolutely. Azad, there is a reason why I became a lot interested in this specific area. Of course, when I was in Pakistan, there was a huge focus mostly on gender parity and gender equality, meaning encouraging more women to come into the workforce and start contributing to the overall country's growth. Pakistan has 51% of its population represented by women, and out of that, if I remember correctly, just 20 to 25% at in those times were in working space, and that too majorly in the teaching sector or in the banking sector. So in Pakistan, the passion started more from making sure that we do have women employed in roles which are traditionally held by men, and nothing to say that it was not correct, but it was more of a barrier for women to come into such roles. So creating that understanding and space and support system within the organization to make sure that women who are qualified, who are interested, and who are passionate to work, let's say in manufacturing positions or in sales positions, are also getting that opportunity. So that was something happening more in Pakistan. And when I moved to Turkey, my interest got more when we talk about around inclusion. And here is why. Yes, I was the first non-Turkish person in the corporate headquarters. So of course that required a lot of different ways of working, not just for me, but
Mhm.
for my colleagues around me as well. And since I was the first Pakistani to be sent here, I always felt the responsibility to create a good experience and show a good performance so that I can open doors for some of the other amazing talent that is in Pakistan and in aspiring to do bigger roles and take care of bigger portfolios. One thing that I observed that inside that made me become more interested in inclusion is that even in homogeneous teams as well, even if people are coming, even if people have the same nationality, same cultural background, same heritage, same educational background, more or less similar socioeconomic backgrounds as well, they're all unique because they all think differently
Mhm.
and they may have gone through similar experiences, but how they learn and evolve from those personal experiences is also very different. And that is why I started to think that inclusion is way broader and way bigger than just diversity. It is
Mhm.
not important to have inclusion for diverse teams. It's equally important to make sure that the workplace is inclusive and associates and employees are inclusive even in non-diverse teams.
Mhm.
So that was my starting point. And as simple as that, I observed that sometimes if a senior person is saying a particular point of view or has a particular opinion, most of the team members would kind of follow whatever
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
leader is saying. They may not always necessarily agree to that. They obviously at many a point of times have different ideas and different point of views, which when explored showed that they bring more value to the task at hand, to the business at hand. So that is how my passion started in the area of inclusion. And our company was also at that time wanted to focus more on diversity and inclusion across the region, across the nine countries that we were operating. So it became a perfect match for me
Mm.
to start working on that. And back then, what I remember is it was a lot around not just inclusive attitude and inclusive mindset within homogeneous teams, but at the same time, because operating in nine countries back then, I'm talking about 2013 to 2016, 17, the company was operating in nine different countries. All of these countries have their own individual culture, which was national culture, but then there were regional cultures, different age groups. Back then, more than I think 50% of population was under 30 years of age. So that's how my passion started, and I continue to focus more on inclusion because I genuinely believe that if we keep on intentionally creating an inclusive environment, not at work, but in the society as well, I believe it definitely will create more peace, more acceptance,
Mhm.
and provide individuals as a whole to be their true selves and not have to assimilate because majority is like that, or not have to find ways to hide who they truly are. And as you rightly said a little while ago, it fits perfectly well with my overall passion of making sure that everyone is able to bring their true self to work, and I am enabling them to bring their strengths
Mhm.
to the top, and practice them, and of course continue to learn of doing things differently and handling situations differently.
And I see you how your body language has changed when you talk about the perfect match, the area of your interest, which is diversity and inclusion, and you yourself, your values. And I heard the solution orientation. You see a problem and you don't accept, you try to find a solution, and you have a huge responsibility on your shoulders that you feel yourself responsible, and you are keen to accepting differences, and which brings me to think about how humanistic you are. So you believe in humans, and you just have that humanitarian values maybe. So you also mentioned about the barriers in cultural environment in the workspaces, and from my knowledge on the inclusive behaviors, I see or I know that leadership has much more attention or importance on it. So as an expert on this field, what would you say the inclusive behaviors of a leader in a workplace which is not very inclusive?
Well, I'm still learning. I do have some experiences under my belt and some knowledge under my belt, but I think I'm far from calling myself as an expert. But I'm happy to hear that. So thank you for giving me that recognition. Um, Especially when I talk about inclusive environment, inclusive mindset, and inclusive behavior. What lately I've started to observe while going through different researches and employee sentiment studies and employee experiences indicators, I now genuinely believe that a lot of it is rooted in trust. If there is a trust between two people, two colleagues, a manager, a leader, and their teams, everything else becomes rather easy to flow in. Because if there is a trust and there is positive intent, and all the parties who are involved in a team or working together know that whatever the other person is saying out of respect and saying out of positive intent to make them better or to make the work overall better, it genuinely creates a lot of feelings of authenticity, feelings of and confidence to share their opinions, even if they are different from the other people. And of course, then it creates a lot of healthy team climate, which is necessary for having the experiences of inclusion and belonging. So for me, if I were to put together a few ingredients on the table, it definitely starts with trust that breeds a lot of psychological safety, ability to voice your opinions, take risks as well. Of course, calculated risks, and sometimes also do experimentation as well. That, okay, this is an idea, this is how it can be executed. Let's pilot it, let's try it out and see how it works before we scale it up. So, those are some of the ingredients that I would definitely call out for anyone, whether that is an individual contributor, whether it's a people leader, or whether it's a senior business leader, is ensure and protect and grow trust, psychological safety, and those two elements strongly create feelings of inclusion and belonging. And I think that for me is the key.
Trust, psychological safety, and I also heard respect. So
yes.
These are the words that I heard the most from you. So what is possible for you thinking about inclusion and future of organizations?
I think everything is possible. What I really appreciate about the next generation that's coming into workspace, Gen Z, and of course there are different perspectives around their thinking style, their work preferences, but I really am appreciative of them being more inclusive generally than the other generations that we have seen. So I'm quite confident and I'm quite hopeful that the next generation is going to continue carrying the torch and, of course, bring greater impact, not just in the organization, but in the communities and the societies we serve, because they are very much, by nature, by default, are more inclusive of each other, of different cultures, different thought processes, different representations. So I'm quite confident of that. And yes, we have millions of researchers that we see who talk about the business value of diversity and inclusion. But genuinely, when we look at the future of work in terms of ways of working, in terms of how the working style evolution is happening, inclusion is becoming a key ingredient to be successful in anything and everything that you're trying to do. And it's mostly about being open to listen to what other people have to say, what their experiences are, because I think it's important as a global human race that we need to learn more how to coexist. Because one of the things that I've recently started to see is that a lot of polarization. This is my point of view. If you don't agree to my point of view, then you're nobody, you know. So a lot of polarization. There is, unfortunately, in the last couple of years, the tolerance to listen and the tolerance to know what other people are thinking and why they are thinking and kind of taking that has not been there. So one of the key things that I always talk about within the inclusion space and overall within the growth space, you know, in terms of growing as an individual and as a business, is a lot around coexistence. We can have different perspectives, we can have different experiences, we may not agree on a particular point of view, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be one solution, one outcome. So coexistence is another element that I talk a lot moving forward, that in order for us to continue to grow as an organization, as a community, as a society, and be more inclusive and open and respectful of each other, it's very important that we start training our minds to be more focused on coexistence.
Yeah, I mean, irrespective of business results, you see it with a broadened picture and essential element of being a human being, maybe, or having a better world with an humanitarian approach with all those tolerance and dialogue, maybe.
Exactly.
You are providing also a hope and maybe a soul to the existing business climate, which I see a need actually recently. And
that's why I say, you know, that's why I talk a lot about respect, because in order for us to coexist, in order for us to have a lot of tolerance, is the element of respect as well. You know, we need to, not need to, we continue to show respect to each other.
Yeah.
Irrespective where we come from, what our identity is, how do I show up, what are our political beliefs, what are our religious beliefs, what are our life experiences. I think it's very important to have tolerance and respect for everything on the table. And then having, as you rightly said, have the courage to have a good open dialogue, you know.
Tuba'cığım, this is a very deep talk and I really enjoy it. And I again remembered why I love this field, diversity, inclusion, and equity is added recently. And I really thank you. Believe it or not, we are coming towards the end of this conversation. And it is always lovely to hear and learn from you. And now it is time to share your wisdom with everyone. Hope you loved it too.
I had a great time. Thank you so much once again for having me, Azhar. I believe it created an opportunity for me to share a bit of my nuggets with you and, of course, whoever are listening to this podcast. And I genuinely believe I'm a positivist at heart as well. I don't know if that's a word or I've just made it up, but that's how I am at heart. And I always believe in the goodness of things. And I do believe that sooner rather than later, we, as corporate professionals, as a member of our communities and societies, can certainly keep on creating a better place for everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
Congratulations. You have reached the end of this podcast series. If the topic has caught your interest, keep following me for ongoing personal growth and development.